A Feast Unknown, from chapter 25. Lord Grunneth and Doc Caliban are in the caves of the Nine in deepest Africa, summoned before the council of the Nine. The speaker thumped his staff upon the oaken floor. Again, it was as if a stalagmite had fallen. Almost everyone jumped. I did. I react swiftly to stimuli, unless I have some reason to control myself. Caliban did not jump. He merely smiled on seeing my response, and he looked utterly savage as he did so. And then he turned his head to look at the Nine. The speaker told us briefly what we would do because of the death of Zhao Zhao. We would go through the ceremony in the presence of the other servants. All except two would experience the same ceremony as before. These two were the final candidates, chosen from this group in the cavern. If the two candidates did not meet the requirements of the Nine, if both failed, then other candidates would be chosen from the rest of the group. That, however, would be at a later time, since the test would occupy the two for a while. Silence fell again, like a piece of darkness from the ceiling. The Nine seemed to be thinking of other things. Perhaps they were remembering the last time a new man had taken a seat. The cry of the speaker cracked the darkness. Lord Grunneth, Dr. Caliban, approach. Wade through the waters, climb the tree to the table of the gods. We walked down the slope and into the lake. The waters were cold. The blood in my legs jellied, quivered, and was dead. This deadness went up my legs, up my thighs, and then the waters covered my testicles, and my penis, which had lost its swelling as soon as it fell the waters. The testicles tried to retreat into the cavity of my belly, and then they froze. My bowels became ice. The lower part of my spine was a tree, with roots exposed to the Arctic Sea. Climbing up the oak logs to the top of the structure did not thaw me much. The ascent was not easy because of the partial paralysis and because the logs were slimy. I don't know what was the ultimate fate of anyone who slipped back into the waters and then could not make the climb. Caliban and I got to the top at the same time. At the low-voiced direction of the speaker, we stood side by side. We faced Anana across the table. She looked even more wrinkled than I remembered her, as if time had folded up her face like a bag and then changed his mind and unfolded it to give her a chance to live longer. The dark blue eyes in that face, like a fist, were bright, however, and deep. The many thousands of years had drilled into the region behind the eyes. There was something ineffably sphinx-like about her, and at the same time something unidentifiable. That nameless quality was frightening. She and three others of the Nine are the only human beings that ever made me feel touched with fear. These four may not be human. When a man lives past 1,000 years, he may become more or less than human. Nana's voice was a whisper. She spoke in English with echoes of a tongue that perished long before bronze was invented. What is your quarrel with him, Grunneth? I believe that she knew very well what my quarrel was. She probably knew far more than I, since she also would have the facts about Caliban. Also, I was beginning to wonder if she was not in part at least responsible for the state in which Caliban and I were currently enmeshed. The speaker bellowed out her question. The words flew back from a distant wall like invisible bats. I said, Caliban attacked me without provocation. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the bronze figure shudder a little. Did you, Caliban? The speaker shouted her words. No, he lies, the speaker repeated in a voice like a bull's. No, he lies. I was beginning to get irritated by the thunderish repetitions and the bat-like echoes which seemed to jeer. Ordinarily, such things do not bother me. The unusualness of the ceremony, its unknown and possibly sinister development, the irrational motives for Caliban's hatred, my desire to kill him and get him out of the way, and my nervousness to get to England to protect Cleo combined to make me abnormally sensitive. Anana said, why did you attack Gruneth? You raped and murdered my cousin, Trish Wilde. You know this to be a fact. She was with a botanical expedition near the Uganda-Kenya border. A naked man ran into the camp at night, knocked Trish out, and carried her off. Some of the natives identified the man as Gruneth. They tried to follow, but lost the trail. They did run across two natives who had seen Gruneth raping my cousin. He paused. It sounded like a suppressed sob came from him. They interrupted him. He took off with Trish over his shoulder, running like an antelope. She's a big woman, weighs 150 pounds. Who else could carry her off like that? And then Trish's colleagues found her 2 days later. What was left? The hyenas and the vultures. He drew in a deep breath, but his face was expressionless. There must have been enough to identify her. Only bones, but her skull was missing. But the bones were those of a Caucasian female of her age, that is 25 in appearance. Actually, she's 60. The skull was never found? No, it's presumed a hyena, or perhaps a leopard carried it off. Do you know anything of Gruneth? Anana said. Until 1948, I had thought he was a writer's creation. A character in a sense of fantastic novels, Caliban said. Not until then did I find out by accident that there was a factual basis to the fiction. I was curious and did some investigating through agents. I learned some things about him. Not much, but enough to make me suspect that he was one of us. I did not follow up the investigation because I became occupied with other matters. Your brain transplant experiments? Anana whispered. She smiled a terrible smile, and she also extended 2 fingers of her left hand. This was a sign to the speaker to not repeat her words. We have learned a number of things about you recently. We suspect that you have also been researching with the idea of independently producing the elixir. So far, you have not succeeded, and we have good reason to think that you will never succeed. But this does not displease us, for we have not forbidden our servants to try to make their own elixir. And if you had not tried, you would not have come up to our expectations of you. However, this is not my main point. I point out to you that your investigation showed that Gruneth was in many respects like you. You are undoubtedly the 2 greatest athletes that the world has produced for several thousand years. Which is the greatest remains to be tested. You 2 even resemble each other facially, though your different coloring tends to conceal it. There was a long speech in public for one of the 9. I wondered what she was getting at, or 2, but did not say anything, of course. She leaned forward and stretched out her skinny arms, the great veins like asphyxiated snakes. She said, "Come closer." "Today," she said, "you will not have to give up part of your flesh to the knife. You will eat with us in preparation for your contest. The next time we meet here to eat, only one of you will be at this table, or at any table." Apparently, there was to be no more discussion of our grievances or any arbitration of our case. They did not care who was wronged or who was wrong. They probably did not even acknowledge that wrong existed except in human minds. I say human because I do not think they thought of themselves as human. Though they could die, they must have considered themselves as gods. No human being could live that long and have such power and not think themselves divine. Would I, if I became one of the 9, come to think as they?